My name is Tessa Cunningham-Monroe, and this is Myles Munroe. And today in the Teacher's Lab, we're featuring champion and veteran West Coast Swing teacher, Myles Munroe. He's going to be taking us through some questions about his teaching career, which spans dozens of dance styles and over 2 decades, and share some advice that West Coast Swing teachers can benefit from no matter what stage they're at in their teaching journey. So we've asked swing literacy teachers to submit questions in advance and hope that you get a little teaching inspiration today. We're going to make this session public, so feel free to share this one with your friends. So let's get started. So Myles, tell us a little bit about your background. Just give us the 1-minute elevator pitch of your background.
Of my dance background?
Of your dance background and teaching background.
Okay, so dance background, started doing solo dancing when I was 8 years old. Started with a performing arts company and school, so I was trained in jazz and ballet primarily, as well as numerous other styles like hip hop and things like that, but primarily jazz, Fosse jazz, and ballet, Paris ballet. And when I started at 8, so then when I was 10, I started doing country western dancing as well. When I was 14, I added competitive international ballroom and Latin to that, and I did all of them up until I was 20, and then I gave them all up for swing.
For me. For West Coast Swing.
In the country world, West Coast Swing was most people's favorite, and there was a lot of tie-in with the swing world. So it was always kind of a thing to I want to make it big in the swing world as well as country world. But I was, when I was 20 in 2000, it was just so easy. My first swing event going, yep, that's the one I want to do. Not realizing how different country West Coast Swing was to real West Coast Swing, but I made it work. And I've been doing that ever since. So this is officially 25 years of teaching, because I started teaching dance when I was 16.
Getting paid for it.
Getting paid. I was teaching, assisting, or holding classes when I was 14. But my actual first job as a teacher was when I was 16 at the Ballroom and Latin Studio, teaching international Latin as well as country, but primarily international Latin.
So you never taught the solo classes, or you did? You taught the little kids how to do hip hop and
stuff.
I
taught like kids hip hop and jazz and stuff like that. I subbed in a lot at our performing arts school in the last couple of years, and when I was when I was 18 to 20, I was in a professional company that we had to teach at least 1 class a week. And when I moved out here, I taught a couple series of classes at our local adult solo dance company called Harbor Dance. So taught some jazz classes there.
So what do you wish you knew when you first started teaching partner dancing?
Everything that I learned from you. So the biggest thing I would say that I wish I knew, knowing what I know now, is the understanding of how to deliver information through the learner's experience, because everything I've done growing up was from a natural standpoint. I'm a natural dancer, so it was easy for me just to watch and do. I didn't have to break things down. So that didn't come easy to me, but understanding the skill development route makes that so easy to understand how to break something down to then turn around and deliver it. I remember even 20, 22, 23 teaching, somebody would actually, right up until I was about 20, somebody would ask me a question and I would just say, do this. And I would just demonstrate it a bunch of times, just do this. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew my body did it right. And then it finally clicked one night teaching at a bar in Red Deer. Somebody asked me a question about a 2-step move, and I was like, wait, why do I do that? It's because this is going to open the follower up and clear the path, because my next step has to go straight forward. I don't have, and I started breaking it down right there on the spot, and it changed the way I teach forever, because right then I started, every time I had a question, or even on my own practice, I would actually analyze, why am I doing this? Why is this working this way? What is the purpose of this versus this? And then adding the skill side of it, those two things
The
together.
skill progression, yeah.
Whew,
Yeah.
if I'd known that back then, so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be something that you'd recommend to all new teachers in the beginning, as soon as possible in their teaching career, is to analyze the cause and effect, the why, and then find a way to train in skill development so that they can get into the student's experience and explain what that student needs at their stage of development, and then progress it from there.
Yeah, I think like the analyzing and breakdown of the whys is great to answer a question and to also know the exact purpose of the movement you're doing. But the skill breakdown, the skill progression, and the actual let's do a drill that's not part of the pattern, the combination, the whatever, right? That skill-based learning.
Extract the skill from the piece of choreography you're doing.
Because I also grew up doing martial arts, and you know, all my friends played sports because I grew up in a hockey town. It makes so much sense to do our dancing like a sport. And every sport under the sun is taught from skill development and skill-based learning, with all these drills and things that aren't necessarily the exact thing that you're going to do in the dance. Now, does every dance have a few? Sure. But nothing like what we're bringing to the table in this program. The amount of drills, the amount of breakdown of separation of technique put back into context.
So you'd agree that those are the things that you'd recommend for new teachers?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. So the next question, is that okay?
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about teaching that you could never get tired of?
The aha moment.
I think almost every teacher will probably say that.
Yeah. The moment that a student gets it.
The light bulb goes on.
Whether or not it was something they were struggling with, or if it was just something they just didn't know. And it just resonates and clicks with them, and they have that clarity, both in their visual expression, their verbal expression, and their ability from that point on. That will never get old.
Yeah.
Never.
That's pretty inspiring as a teacher too. And it doesn't really matter how big the aha moment is.
Yeah.
Like that student we were talking about earlier who had that revelation of, oh, you mean quicks are half the size of a slow? Oh, it's such a small thing, but made some massive difference in his dance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because to him, that's massive.
Well, it's an obstacle.
Right.
It's like a when you have a kidney stone, it's a little thing that's making a big problem. Yeah.
Don't even go there.
Okay, so how do you think teaching West Coast Swing in general has changed since you first started? Even since you first started dancing. When you first started dancing, you were taught a certain way, right? And the whole profession of teaching West Coast Swing has evolved since then, as dancing has evolved. So what are you observing?
I would actually say in general, the format and structure of teaching hasn't changed. The science behind what we do, that has changed. A lot of people are a lot more aware of it, so they're delivering more of the science, but they're still delivering it within the format and context that pretty much has always been. Here's our patterns. Here's our structure. You're going to do this move to this move to this move. Okay, here's a thing to watch for. Here's a technical point. Here's a timing that you don't want to miss. But it's always delivered from that context of we're already doing the move.
Pattern.
Right? So even when I see people that are breaking something down, they'll teach the first half of the move, then talk about the technique part, do it, and then continue the move. So there's still no separation of the technique they want to focus on compared to the pattern. It's still, everyone's learning the technique in that specific pattern, so we're locked to that pattern bias. And that's in all partner dancing. It's has been, from the way that I looked through the International Dance Teacher book, the way that they break it down. So in country, it's the same thing. In swing, it's the same thing. all my experience with Lindy Hop and other swing dances taught the same way.
I mean, there's obviously outliers. There's got to be teachers that are more savvy to the science or to sports-based or education-based principles, and they're probably out there. But in general, the common like standard of teaching, pattern-based formula is probably the same. But I like what you said about how there's more teachers who are aware of the science and starting to like expose it. What I see is back in the day when you first started, the dance was a lot more, I want to say primitive, just because it was more of a bar activity than it was a hobby to refine and practice and compete and perfect and master. And so I think the mastery side of the dance has become more prevalent in the last maybe decade and a half. Whereas before it was more dominated by the recreation aspect of it. People were more into the recreation and the fun. I mean, it's always going to be fun, but they were more interested in showing up to the bar and just winging it, as opposed to studying it, practicing it, and mastering it.
You're talking West Coast swing specifically, yeah.
Yeah, West Coast swing specifically, yeah. So do you feel like the way that we teach the dance has changed, given that the priorities have changed?
Probably. I think with anything, the more competitive it gets, the more scientific, the more technical it has to be, right? And therefore, the people that are teaching it and coaching it are the ones that have to find that information, deliver that information, so that their students can be better than the other students. It's just competitive nature.
And the nice thing is, even the students who aren't competitive are reaping the rewards from that evolution. And so now we have all this much better science and much better delivery method that we can pass on to students who are not competitive at all. And it just makes the whole dance easier to learn, which is cool. So let's talk about solo dancing. Okay. So what do you think solo dance teachers can learn from partner dance teachers?
So I'm going to use our analogy from earlier in our other calls where we're talking about waving a magic wand.
You're talking about in our boot camp call that we had earlier, the coaching call?
And all of our other formats that we use that, right? So if I could wave a magic wand to the solo dance world with something that we as partner dancers utilize, it would be actual breakdown of technique in most senses. So whether or not you're talking about the standard format of partner dancing or our version of heavily drill and skill based, doesn't matter. When I was teaching solo dancing, when I moved out here, when I was still taking classes or sitting in on them occasionally or randomly, when I still watch a master class of solo dancing, it's still the same thing where it's all follow what the teacher's doing, look at their choreography, follow along, and listen to cue words. So the technique you learn over time from hearing a constant thing, if you're working on your pirouettes, get your foot up higher, squeeze it into your leg, spot, more rotation on your prep. It's not taught. That's picked up over years and years and years of learning, of listening to that constant reminder.
So it's cues in context rather than a formal separate lesson about some technique.
Right. Like everything that I've ever delivered that you guys have even seen of talking about how to do a pirouette, from setting your torque point, your prep point, powering from the body. I never heard any of that in my entire time at a performing arts school.
You learned it through implied
and then applying science as I learned more about the human body, and from other dances, like our partner dances, talking about why we have to torque the body.
Now, that being said, that was 3 decades ago. So, I mean, solo dancing must have evolved since then.
I mean, literally this last year, watching programs on TV, like a Dance Moms version, when they're showing a class, it's the same thing.
Well, it's heavily edited too, though. You got to give them the benefit of the doubt. But chances are there's not nearly as much distinctive technical work until you probably get to like a mastery level, like maybe a higher level where you're just focusing on a masterclass technique?
No, this is harder choreography. That's all it ever was.
So what you're saying is, so what solo dancers could learn from partner teachers is breaking out the technique specifically. But what we were just talking about before indicates that not all partner teachers do that.
But all of our partner dances still have some focus of breaking down the steps and why, like what the step is.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Versus just showing it and you doing it with keywords until you've got it right.
Mm-hmm.
The solo dance world caters heavily to visual based learners. People that need technical breakdowns will never succeed in that. Like in other sports, right? They say you've got your naturals, and then the people that, if you work hard enough and you dedicate yourself to it, you can be really good, even without natural talent. Hard work will beat natural talent every day of the week. Not in the solo dance world, because there's nothing to learn for that hard worker. There's no, like sports all have those skill-based drills.
There's nothing to learn for that hard worker
that are taught to them through technique and then established.
Right.
You build up the skills to do the game.
Right. It's harder to learn the skills because they're not explicitly taught. So a hard worker doesn't have enough to work on. Yeah. Yeah, I can get that.
They can do it for 40 years and still never be able to do a pirouette because they've never actually been taught every phase of it.
Or they have to work really hard in order to find the instruction specifically on that.
Which I will say these days with YouTube, that would be a lot easier to do.
Yeah, right? There
are people that break down, here's the difference between a pose and a piqué turn.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, they're showing technique,
mm-hmm.
which would have been awesome back then. Because that most technical things that I remember are the difference between this move and this move.
So that's something that has changed since you first started dancing. Something that's changed about teaching is the whole YouTube phenomenon has really changed the game.
Yeah.
But how you can deliver technique to the masses and explain things that maybe the kids in the studio don't have the patience to learn when they're just there for their weekly class and they just want to play together and dance. Sound familiar?
Or you feel like you don't have the time as the teacher, so they're putting these extra little like 10-minute clips out,
mm-hmm.
probably for their students to have to watch.
Hey, that's what's working for swing literacy.
Hey, my feedback guides, right?
So let's reverse this actually. What do you think partner dance teachers can learn from solo dance teachers?
Ooh, this one, like, I really had to think a lot on this one. And if anything, I would say it is that quick fire keyword and visualization. Most partner dancer teachers, I find, don't have the coaching skills, which is like in the moment, rapid fire, cueing, reminders, little technical points, like our hot seat coaching versus the spotlight coaching,
mm-hmm.
right? The spotlight, when we're all talking after we watch a video, that's a lot more instructional.
It's more summary. We're talking about what we did watch and we're reviewing the techniques and observations that already happened.
Where if you sat through one of our hot seat coaching, that's just cue words on the fly
in the moment
to make the adjustments that the person's doing right then. That's a true coaching method. And solo dancing is fantastic at that, because that's pretty much all they do, right? While you're doing choreography, but also the visualization of things, like reaching up and then reaching up higher because you're reaching for your hand in the cookie jar. Just little things like this that most people can relate to very easily, and it's always like the right one.
Right.
Like very few people would reach for a cookie jar on top of the fridge in a weird way. It will make almost everybody move the same way, and they're really good at that.
Do you remember Mo, that teacher at Harvard Dance, who was so good at this? And
so good at that.
She would have the best analogies. Like she would be like, "Okay, I need you to visualize like, you're cold, and now you're super hot, and so you have to release your jacket, like throw your jacket off." So she had all these like great analogies.
And like throw it off in a fit.
Right. She's like, "Okay, now you can't get your ring off, right? And now you're John Travolta from Grease, So she had all these like really quick little analogies or little visualizations that she could throw out that really helped you like zone in on exactly what the character of the movement was without having to explain a whole bunch of extraneous details in a nice little mental schema package.
They're so specific yet general. Like if somebody said shake off a ring, everyone's going to do pretty much the same motion. Yet it's a very specific wording and type of movement, right? So she was fantastic at that.
So I think that's something that partner dancers, I think I would agree with you that they would have, they could use a little bit more of those analogies, those to build mental schema for their students.
Right. Like you guys think about,
make it quicker to explain.
When you're taking private lessons, a lot of time,
less wordy.
They would probably watch you social dance, like put on a song, and they'll either stop you, talk about some things, or wait till you're done the song, then talk about a bunch of things.
Debriefing.
But it would be great if during that dance they could also be cueing you and giving you those visuals or those sound single words just to remember. Oh yeah, posture, pitch,
which by the way, spoiler alert, we're actually providing to the Momentum membership next month in the theme. The balanced conversations theme. Yeah. Okay, next question. What do you wish teachers today would learn when they first start teaching?
Should learn, would learn?
You wish they would. You wish that more teachers, when they first start teaching today, would learn this.
Skill-based learning.
Like progressive skill development?
How to do the base structure and refine it down to the fancy sculpture.
So in other words,
that concept,
shaping skills, from simple to complex, and building skill progressions.
However,
using drills.
Like there's so many different methods that we use to get that base to refinement. But that right there is pretty much why we say that most partner dances are taught backwards, because they're really taught in that upside down version, refinement to then learning about the general concept of things and the general picture. So I would definitely say that however they want to do it, if it's through drills exclusively, through breakdown of more technique as they go.
Well, it's not really really a set of options. It's more like multiple tools in your toolbox you need in order to accomplish that.
Right. Adding the layer by layer by layer. That right there, I think I would wish every new teacher had an understanding of that concept.
Right. So that's just to juxtapose that against what the opposite would be. The opposite would be learning just here's the pattern. Here's what you do on step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, like you're assembling IKEA furniture. So rather than teaching a pattern from in a chronological order from count 1 to the end of the pattern, instead building those skills progressively so that the student learns the skill of the pattern, and the pattern is more like just one of several products that they can create with those skills.
Yeah, because really the other is just memorizing the instructions.
Yeah.
Right. We've all built enough IKEA furniture that I'm pretty sure if you got an IKEA bookshelf, you don't need to look at the instructions. You've probably built enough of them over your life. Right.
And that's the time when you start to lose pieces. You have extra pieces. So do we have any other questions from the peanut gallery here? Does anybody else have any more questions for Myles?
About any of those topics?
Yeah, anything to do with his teaching background or solo teaching, or what he'd recommend for teachers when they first get started.
You do have a couple.
While you're thinking about that, I have one more. What's your most embarrassing teaching moment, Myles?
Unfortunately, it happened twice.
He didn't learn his lesson.
And luckily the first one was in a bar with all adults, so it was semi-excusable. I was teaching a telemark.
Forgivable, not
Right.
excusable.
In a bar class, which at this point they had been with me for, I think, 7-8 years. So very familiar. You get a little raunchy, which is all good. So I'm teaching a telemark, and if you guys know that movement, it's off the left side pass with a rotation, pick the follower up, and pivot around.
Pivot together and pass each other.
And the key point of that is that the leaders have to delay their 4 count step, so the follower actually steps first, and then the leader steps in and does a pivot. The same way that we do a whip, right? From the follower stepping in to us, not around us. So I'm stressing this, and I'm seeing everyone try and walk around their follower.
This is really common error, by the way.
And I'm trying to stress it out, and I keep using this phrase, which I'll tell you in a second. So I keep saying this like key phrase, and I'm saying it over and over and over again
to remind them to where they're supposed to put their foot.
And my teaching assistant, who is a very prim and proper lady,
Not me.
Sophisticated, like fantastic lady, but doesn't ever cuss. She's looking at me like, kind of getting frustrated. The raunchy guy in class that, anything dirty, he can't let it go. He just has to laugh.
The dirty old
He
man
finally
jokes.
is like, dude, you have to stop saying that. I'm like, saying what? And she looks at my teaching assistant, looks at me and says, you keep saying, guys, you have to come up inside her.
Oh, brutal.
I was like, yeah. So you want to make sure that you step into your follower and not around them. So just step at their left foot and you're all good.
Yeah, that's the value of recording yourself, so you can give yourself instant feedback and listen to what you're saying.
But they let me say it at least a dozen times.
Now, was that on purpose to just kind of like dig the hole a little deeper, or did they just hope that you were going to clue in eventually?
I'm sure they thought it was humor, and then maybe not. Now it's getting gratuitous.
At least they gave you the benefit of the doubt in the beginning.
Well, like I said, it was a pretty informal class. And then in the exact same type of thing, teaching a hustle class with you,
Yeah.
which a hustle turning basic is the exact same movement
Yeah.
that we're talking about. Again, the leaders wanted to keep stepping around their followers instead of stepping in to do the pivot. But this time, I was hyper aware not to say those words.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, guys, you got to get between her legs. It's the best place in the world you can be.
And it was totally genuine. He did not mean to
And
make a joke.
She's like,
I know. I'm like hitting him.
what? And then she says, I'm like, oh, yeah.
That's why you got to have like some kind of arrangement with your teaching partner of like a squeeze system. So we have like when we're holding hands and we're talking to a class and blah, 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 we have 2 signals. One is, excuse me. So I just went squeeze, squeeze. Squeeze, squeeze means when you're done, I need to say something. Like I have something to say, but finish what you're saying first and it's my turn. Okay. Squeeze means stop what you're saying right now. Like just a continuous hard squeeze.
Yeah.
So I was squeezing the crap out of him that day.
Yeah. The unintentional dirty thing is always going to be embarrassing.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Here's a great question. What makes a class memorable or really gets students hooked, feels excited, and want to keep learning? Now, you have some great experience with this because for years you were known for this, and then we became known for this, of students leaving classes like totally enthusiastic and not realizing that they actually learned a ton of stuff. Like completely being tricked into realizing that they learned more than they thought they would in that hour because they were having so much fun.
So it's giving them lots of little wins, whether or not that's through our drills or something like that, but them having fun doing things that, again, like a drill, like a ring around the rosy, when we're playing that to understand centrifugal force and counterbalance, like that's silly.
They're games. They're literally games.
But we're doing it for a reason.
Yeah.
Because it's teaching them something, right? So definitely, I think that's something that every teacher has to focus on, is giving them lots of little wins instead of one major one, or giving them the 2 to 3 week buildup, right? Edging them along, and then finally, okay, now you get a big payoff on week 4. Yeah, that isn't going to keep people inspired to learn. But lots of little wins in a class, even without a big one, they still are so satisfied because they've had so many moments of getting something. Like I said earlier about the rewarding thing, those aha moments. Little wins are little ahas or victories. They're exciting.
So that answers the question about get students hooked, feel excited, and want to keep learning. But there's actually another part to this question, and that is what makes a class memorable? So that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with their succeeding at skills. You can have a memorable class for a lot of different reasons. One is Myles slips, the embarrassing moments, right? That's a memorable class.
None of them will ever forget that.
We're not recommending you go embarrass yourself, but you might want to have like a little toolkit that you can pull out of jokes, or dad jokes, or time fillers when you're waiting for music to start playing, or even cultural things. And this is something that we get into in the Teaching Impact Practicum, is part of the skills of teaching is how to build a culture in your classroom or in your class of growth mindset, of a safe space to make mistakes, of a safe space to exchange feedback with your peers, of getting creative and getting acknowledged for being creative, maybe splitting your class into teams and having like a little game where teams compete against each other in a fun little cute rivalry. Maybe working together in small pods to be able to create something together or brainstorm on a move together. I mean, these are just like super, like just scratching the surface of all the different ways that you can create a fun culture in your class, but have not necessarily anything to do with skills improving. Right. It has to do with their social environment improving.
Yeah, in this case, it's a lot more of the presentation, right? So if you think about anything you've ever been to presentation-wise, be it a Tony Robbins seminar or a presentation when you're walking through the county fair and they're selling knives, or the slap chop guy, right? Like the slap chop guy, super memorable because his presentation was very personable. He's weird to look at there, so there's something about him that you're drawn to. His excitement was insane, and it just it gets in you. It's infectious.
It's magnetic,
right? But it had nothing to do with what he was selling. And so in that case, the memorable is a almost universal presentation skill. Mm-hmm. It's not that part's not about what you are delivering in the context of the teaching of dance.
So in other words, you can create memorable ways of presenting regardless of what type of things that what type of content you're talking about in the class, whether that's a pattern or a social dance skill or a technique, doesn't really matter. The presentation can make it memorable and make it more magnetic.
So if anyone that you ever remember of a seminar that you went to, it's those same skills. The beauty is there's also a ton of that information out there, how to be a better presenter for anything.
Public speaking,
that, or I'm sure if you even typed in on YouTube, making a presentation memorable, there's probably thousands of videos with those skills in it. So
another way that you can study that is just by watching, workshops or recaps or whatever from other teachers that you enjoy. And instead of being enthralled by the content, watch how they're doing what they're doing. Watch how they present, how they're speaking, how they're asking questions, the wait time that they're asking for after jokes or after saying rotate. Listen to their timing. Listen to how often they're drawing attention to their students and how often they're drawing attention to themselves. Just you're listening for a different layer of the teaching aspect that's going on.
Actually, TED Talks are pretty good for that because TED Talks are always screened by the topic. So you get some of those presenters that are like very boring and basic, but great information. And then you get other ones that maybe the information is not all that exciting, but they make it exciting.
you know how they have
remember a ton about it. You remember that person, maybe not their name, but it's that same thing.
TED Talks have a formula that they're forced to follow, so they don't have as much freedom.
But that's what makes it even easier to try and learn those skills.
Oh yeah, I can see what you mean.
Right? It's much more comparable that way.
Fewer variables to observe.
Exactly.
Yeah. So here's a question. What did you do as a solo dancer, Myles, that you found most challenging in learning the game of communicating with your dance partner? So as a solo dancer, what was the most challenging part of partnership skills that you had to learn?
Honestly, I don't think I did.
You don't think you ever learned
I didn't have a challenge with that, because before I even learned a partner dance, like just my parents dragging me and my brother to a class that had a dance after, and some lady would say, "Hey, come dance with me." My natural ability of dance and watching created that. Like, I already understood how to move the body, or maybe it was from my martial arts at that point, but the understanding of that communication wasn't foreign, so there wasn't anything that
it wasn't
I
a
found
struggle
got in my way. Like, obviously there was refinement of it, for sure, like little details.
So
but
how about if we switch the question? What do you find solo dancers have the most issue with when you try to teach them partnership skills? And so in other words, what can teachers expect solo dancers to struggle with when they try to learn partnership skills?
So in that sense, the cause and effect, right? So when we're talking about, a follower that is anticipating the one and therefore never settling the weight back into that foot, they're always staying on the forefoot. That's exactly what we have to combat with any type of partner dance or solo dancer, is the actual understanding of partnering is a cause and effect system.
In other words, someone else is causing you to move,
right,
as opposed to you generating it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I would agree. Is letting yourself be moved or taking responsibility for moving someone else, I think is the most challenging concept.
If they spent 15 minutes on their first practice just teaching that concept,
right,
all of their choreography, everything they did for the rest of the show would be so much better.
Some more than 15 minutes, but yeah.
But they just don't. They break right into choreography, and so what do? They do it on their own, but they're touching each other.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can always see the person that had the background. You can always tell when somebody had some type of partner dancing, because instantly you're like, oh, they're actual partner dancing, because you can see that
That's
cause
impressive.
and effect.
Yeah, somebody taught them right. Yay. All right, well, that's the end of our questions. Thank you very much, Myles, for joining us today and giving us some insight a little bit into your background and your perspective on teaching and helping some newer teachers kind of plot out their journey going forward, and saving them some struggle in the future by taking advantage of wisdom from those that have gone before them. So if this was interesting to you and you'd like more information about the Swing Literacy Teacher Development Program, you can check that out at swingliteracy.com, and we look forward to coaching you in helping you teach West Coast Swing smarter so that your students can train West Coast Swing smarter, and we can all grow this West Coast Swing community together.